Hello everybody, how are you guys doing? This is Rob of Rule of Two Review. Welcome back to the channel. And today, with E3 creeping up on us, we're just over a month away. There's a lot to expect and get excited about. Obviously, I mostly cover and discuss Nintendo here. And as I mentioned recently, I've got a ton of random E3 topics and thoughts and predictions bouncing around in my head every single day. And today what I wanted to focus on was a bit of a predictions kind of conversation about what I think might be some of the biggest games we could see from Nintendo at the show. Now, there really isn't a whole lot of surprises here. This is just kind of discussing a lot of the big Nintendo IPs and titles and a few of the games that have already been announced that I think might show up at the show. It's mostly first-party titles that we're discussing, sure, but there is maybe one or two third-party games kind of wrapped up into this conversation. The return of E3 is a big deal, as I've mentioned pretty much ever since it was announced, coming off of 2020, the pandemic, the canceled E3 show last year, and so seeing the industry come back together, seeing companies like Nintendo and Microsoft and Capcom and Square and so many of the biggest publishers in the industry come together, it's going to be great, man. I'm expecting a huge show, even though it's going to be this weird digital thing. I still have high hopes. Now, we can't forget, with 4 weeks still to go until the show actually happens, there is time for some information to change. There could be significant rumors or leaks that get out there. There could be confirmations from Nintendo or any other company about something that they already have planned for the year. They might even detail more of what they plan to do for E3. As I and some other people have speculated, we might get a huge Nintendo info drop between now and then, whether it's a Nintendo Direct, which admittedly is seeming less likely, or an anniversary celebration for Zelda, Metroid, something else, or just random big game announcement on Twitter. Anything could change between now and then, but it's still fun to talk about E3 as the big kind of show. And so that's what we're going to do. As always, before we dive too much deeper into the Nintendo E3 topic, I do like to remind you that I am always trying to grow the channel here on Rule of Two Review. I am hoping to cross 17,000 subscribers before the end of 2021. I am pretty darn close. I'm only 1,500 away. I upload several videos every single week. I focus on Nintendo. I talk about a lot of Metroid stuff, and I cover all things gaming. So, as you watch this video, if you seem to like what you hear and what I'm doing, then hopefully you will consider subscribing to the channel. So obviously the first and biggest title or franchise to discuss is The Legend of Zelda, and one of my recent videos, actually a few of my recent videos, have kind of discussed this topic, because as 2021 continues to roll on, as we now get closer to E3, we realize that Zelda is the biggest franchise that we expect to have a lot of stuff happen in 2021. First off, it's the 35th anniversary, and as we know, Nintendo celebrated Mario's just a couple of months ago, so why wouldn't they also do the same with Zelda this year? I think a lot of us are expecting it. Earlier in the year, they did also announce a new Zelda release for the Switch in the form of Skyward Sword HD, which I am personally excited for. I know there's a lot of people who are upset about what's happening with that, and in many ways I do understand, but I can't help it. I'm a fan of that game, and I'm very excited to play it again on the Nintendo Switch, releasing on my birthday, by the way. And then, of course, there is Zelda Breath of the Wild 2, which is the confirmed new game that we do know is being made, but we don't really know much else about it, man. The game was revealed at E3 2019, so it's going to be coming up on 2 years ago, next month, and all we've gotten was a trailer that featured no gameplay, the tiniest, ittiest, bittiest hint at some kind of story context, and that's it. We don't know the gameplay, we don't know the real story, we don't know the name of the game, we don't know the release date. Now, I'm someone who, since the game was first announced in 2019, has believed that this year, 2021, was the most likely year to see the game release. And a lot of people do certainly agree with that, but there's a lot of people who are saying it's a Zelda title, it's going to get delayed over and over again, and so we shouldn't expect it to release this year. And I understand that. I mean, really, anything is possible. I'm just telling you my gut feeling is that that game makes sense to release holiday this year. And of course, if that is the case, then that means at E3 next month seems like the ideal time for Nintendo to truly give us the blowout on that game. I've referenced it over the past couple of weeks, back in 2016 when Nintendo did that for the original Legend of Zelda. Granted, the circumstances around Nintendo and the Wii U at the time, the rumors of the NX that were going around, and just all of the strangeness of 2016 Wii U era Nintendo Yes, that was different than what it is right now, but I still think it's a bit of a window into what we might see happen also with Breath of the Wild 2. Of course, if the game is a 2022 game or beyond, then obviously it won't show up at E3 this year. There's no reason for them to do that, but I mean, it's the 35th anniversary. We know the game has been being developed for a while. It was revealed 2 years ago. This year seems like the perfect time to release it, so I think it's fair to expect a lot of info on Breath of the Wild 2 and the Zelda franchise as a whole at E3. The next title I want to talk about, which really is the only major third-party game that we're still waiting on info from, is Bayonetta 3, man. The other weird, mysterious game. There's like 3 huge high-profile games that we know are being developed for the Switch currently. 2 of them are Nintendo games, and one of them really is this third one, Bayonetta 3, at least as far as games that are shrouded in mystery, right? It's Breath of the Wild 2, it's another game I'm going to talk about in a minute, and then, of course, it's Bayonetta 3. Now, Bayonetta 3 finds itself in one of the more frustrating scenarios, right, when it comes to games that we're waiting on info from. I even discussed it a couple of months ago when Hideki Kamiya came out and said a couple of things about, oh, reset your expectations and stop asking for it, and you'll just see it when we're ready to show it to you kind of thing. Which I do understand from the developer perspective, but I do think it's also fair to look at the situation when that game was revealed 3 years ago, and the fact that it's just been this weird ghost title. I mean, since that game was revealed, we both had then revealed and then also released another game from Platinum Games, Astral Chain, which was fan-freaking-tastic. Oh my god, I love that game. And it's like, well, okay, well, where's Bayonetta 3? It's kind of like the seminal Platinum Games franchise, and Nintendo has sort of taken over a pseudo-ownership, you could say, of that franchise, because they basically own all the publishing rights for Bayonetta 2 and Bayonetta 3. And to have a brand new Bayonetta experience, you know, just a third game in the franchise alone gets me excited. But to have it also be an exclusive Switch title makes it exciting for different reasons. And I don't know, man. Is 2021 not the time to finally hear about that game? I kind of think so. I know a lot of you guys think so. And so again, we come back to E3. How could this not finally be the time for them to really show us what this game is? Okay, let's get to the big daddy. And I know the game and the franchise that you guys always want to hear me talk about. And it is my baby, Metroid. Is Metroid going to be making an appearance at E3? Obviously, Metroid is the hardest franchise to predict when it comes to Nintendo right now, but I've been saying for a while that I've got pretty high hopes for Metroid in 2021. I am that optimistic Metroid fanboy, and I'm totally proud to admit it. It really would be foolish of us to ignore the fact that it is also the 35th anniversary of the Metroid franchise. And I know that we're probably all getting sick of this conversation about 35th anniversary, this and that. And I understand it, but I can't help the fact that it's a true thing, and Nintendo set a bit of a precedent by doing the Mario thing last year, and so when it comes to Zelda and Metroid, I believe there's a chance they're going to do something similar. Again, with the 35th anniversary celebration stuff for Zelda and Metroid or any other franchise I might be talking about here, it's tricky in the sense that it's so easy to envision those franchises getting like a direct presentation that's totally separate from E3, right? Because of what they did with Mario, they might be planning a 15-minute Zelda or a 15-minute Metroid Direct that could happen at any time during the year, as opposed to E3. But again, E3 having this kind of glorious feeling return, and the fact that Nintendo was so willing to jump right on board back to E3 again, just makes me feel like they would be willing to do this 35th anniversary stuff at E3 specifically. And so with Metroid, there's a lot of options out there. I mean, how long have you guys been listening to me talk about these options over and over again? The Metroid Prime trilogy is the easy gimme one. And as I said, even in a Q&A and a live stream recently, with the Metroid Prime trilogy getting an HD port, which we've all talked about for so long, it's kind of a situation where they could easily just release that and brand it as a 35th anniversary celebration, and they'd be putting in pretty minimal work. The trilogy package already exists, those games are already made, so they could really feasibly make them HD, slap some motion controls onto the Joy-Cons, and then put a 35 logo on the box. And there you go. It's the 35th anniversary Metroid Prime Trilogy HD release. hooray, you know, this is the thing that we're celebrating. And it's such an easy thing for them to do. How could they not do it this year? And announcing it at E3 would certainly make a lot of headlines. I am someone who's been believing in for a while the idea of Nintendo making a brand new 2D Metroid experience in some way. And there have been plenty of other conversations and rumors and things out there that definitely back that up. And again, in a 35th anniversary year, in a year where E3 is returning and Nintendo is a part of it, that could be something else that we see Nintendo talk about at E3. And obviously a new 2D Metroid game like a Metroid 5 or something else would be the most exciting. I also think there's a chance that Metroid Samus Returns might be getting an HD port. Many people have discussed it. I personally believe there's a great chance. But of course the big thing, the actual big mama that we think about when we think of Metroid, is Metroid Prime 4. Now, right at the beginning of the year, the first video I made in 2021, I told you that I believe in 2021, before December 31st is over of this year, I do believe we will see and maybe get a significant update about Metroid Prime 4. I don't think Nintendo will go the entirety of 2021 without addressing this title in some way, and I think there is a fantastic chance that some kind of trailer or teaser or gameplay sneak peek will be a part of it. And I know that is a lofty goal, that is a big, bold prediction, and many people disagree, and I understand why you disagree. I, of course, could be wrong. It's just a prediction. I don't have any sort of inside info when it comes to Metroid Prime 4. I have no problem telling you that. I don't know squat diddly about what's happening with that game, and I wish that I did. But I can only tell you what my heart and soul as a Metroid superfan believes, and it's that we're going to see that game this year, man. Nintendo will address Metroid Prime 4 in 2021. And now, I don't believe the game is going to release this year. Absolutely. Like, that's not happening. But I do think we're going to see it. And I think Nintendo is going to address it. And again, as is the point of this whole video, E3, man. I think that's the time. So all of these things are options, and E3 becomes a great time to discuss a Prime trilogy, a new 2D Metroid game, a Samus Returns port, Metroid Prime 4. I think one or some of these things have a great chance of showing up at E3 next month. An anniversary that seems to continue to get lost in the shuffle this year is Donkey Kong. Donkey Kong actually celebrates its 40th anniversary this year, even older than Mario, even older than Metroid and The Legend of Zelda. It's Donkey Kong, man. One of the first IPs and franchises and characters Nintendo ever developed as a video game company, 40 years old this year. And there have been discussions, some kind of leaks and rumors put out there, partly by Samus Hunter, who I covered in my last video, saying that, yeah, Donkey Kong is going to be making a return this year. Now, I think Donkey Kong actually has a pretty high likelihood of showing up at E3. And I know that I'm setting up a lot of like really high profile bangers to show up at E3. Obviously, they're not going to have that many large titles, but I can't help it because I think that a lot of these just make a lot of sense. So what are you going to do? I guess I'm going to be the overly optimistic guy today, which honestly, I think I am in most of my videos anyway. So Donkey Kong, yeah, I think it's going to come back. Is it another Donkey Kong Country game? I don't know. Is it a return to a 3D game like they tried with Donkey Kong 64? I don't know. Is it something brand new? I don't know. All of these things are possible, and I just think that we shouldn't write off Donkey Kong, man. I think that if Nintendo is developing a new Donkey Kong game, they would probably want to choose E3 to show it off. So I'm really hoping we see that franchise come back. Now, this is probably a good time to spend a little bit of time talking about the other huge, massive Nintendo franchise that I think is getting lost a little bit in the E3 conversation. And that is, of course, Mario. Super Mario Odyssey was, of course, the last brand new mainline Mario game to release, which was back in 2017, coming up on 4 years ago. And I think that for a while, many people, and this does kind of include myself, have speculated that maybe a Mario Odyssey 2 would be the next game. It does make sense. It would kind of feel like a Super Mario Galaxy and Galaxy 2 kind of situation for them to have done Mario Odyssey and then a Mario Odyssey 2. And I've told you guys before how I really do like Mario Odyssey, but it's not my favorite Mario game. It's actually kind of low on my list of 3D Mario games. However, one thing I do agree with is that it is the perfect kind of Mario game that does deserve a sequel. It is so easy to envision just a phenomenal sequel with more kingdoms, bigger kingdoms, more moons, more cappy things to throw it on. I mean, the sky is the limit. It does lend itself to a sequel very well. And so, 4 years on, when we know we've got another Metroid game and we've got another Zelda game coming, why wouldn't they also be working on the next main Mario game? And honestly, I think that we all already believe that they're working on the next Mario game, whether it's a Mario Odyssey 2 or a whole brand new Mario adventure with a whole new idea. They're working on that game, man. And why wouldn't they share it at E3? I mean, that's the whole theme of this video, right? Is titles and franchises that really deserve to be first showcased and discussed at E3, especially when E3 is returning from a 2-year break. And so, I don't know, man. There's not really been a lot of movement or discussion on this, and the last Mario release, which was the 3D World port earlier this year, was just that, a port. It's not a new game, even though they did create a new experience with Bowser's Fury. I think that they're working on a game, and I think that there's a chance it could release this year, and I think there's a chance it could also be revealed at E3. Now, there's plenty of other options that range in small to medium to pretty large, but I don't want to spend too much more time on other franchises or titles because as we get closer to E3, I will eventually do an actual official large-scale predictions video. Just a big old, I'm predicting E3 stuff, I'm predicting Nintendo stuff, and let's just go crazy with it. That's going to be a whole different 20 or 25 minute conversation. But in this one, the last, I think, Nintendo franchise I want to discuss having a possibility of showing up is Pikmin 4. That's right, I have not forgotten about Pikmin, man. I will never forget about this franchise because I adore this silly, quirky, weird, little cute puzzler game. I think these games are amazing. Obviously, the very idea of Pikmin 4 has a weird and rocky and turbulent history because Pikmin 4 was first discussed by Miyamoto himself back in 2015, where he claimed the game was basically almost done, and then that game never came out. 2 years later in 2017, Hey Pikmin came out on the 3DS, which is fine, and many people, including myself, wondered if that actually was the Pikmin 4 game he was talking about, but they have since confirmed that that's not the case. Miyamoto in 2015 was talking about a different game that we can assume is a Pikmin 4, and we maybe thought it was going to be a Wii U title at the time, but now it's 2021, man. It's been 6 years since that happened. Where is Pikmin 4? I personally believe that it is still being developed. Many people have written that game off, and I understand why, but I don't think that's the case. I think that game exists, it's being made, and I think there are plans to release it sometime soon. Now, having Pikmin 3 Deluxe release at the end of last year in 2020 is an interesting kind of wrinkle to throw into the whole Pikmin situation. Was that maybe confirmation that Nintendo cares about Pikmin, and maybe they were trying to boost interest before announcing their brand new Pikmin 4? Possibly. Was it maybe showcasing the opposite, and that a Pikmin 4 or a new Pikmin game isn't in development and really never was beyond Hey Pikmin, and the only thing they were interested in doing is just throwing out the last gen Pikmin game to get everyone to play that and say, hey, here's your Pikmin, this is all you're gonna get. Either one of those are possibilities, but as I've already established, I'm being optimistic today, and I've been saying for over a year, I think, getting out of 2019 and coming into 2020, I was predicting that Pikmin 4 was going to show up in 2020. Now the pandemic changed everything, and so I personally still believe in Pikmin 4, so now I've shifted my prediction from 2020 to 2021, which means E3, baby. Let's do a big Pikmin 4 E3 reveal. In fact, ironically, the very last time Nintendo ever took the stage at E3 in 2012, a mere 6 months before the Wii U itself would even launch, they actually focused heavily on Pikmin 3. They made an official announcement. Miyamoto took the stage, they discussed it, he was throwing Pikmin out into the audience. It was a good old time, and everyone was excited, and everyone was happy about a new Nintendo console and about the return of Pikmin. And so wouldn't it just be beautifully poetic if at E3 this year, Pikmin made a grand return? And if they were going to do something like this, and I know I'm just shooting for the stars in this video here, if they were going to do something like this at E3 this year, wouldn't it be cool if Miyamoto appeared in their digital presentation and actually became the one to talk about and discuss and reveal the game? In theory, if Pikmin 4 is being made, Miyamoto very likely would have been a part of it this whole time, even though we know he's stepped away from the game development side and focusing on the business and the theme parks and all this stuff. Pikmin is his baby. He was the one who discussed Pikmin 4 back in 2015, so maybe he's still got a huge hand in the development and creation and direction of that game. And so, I don't know, maybe none of this happens with Pikmin, but I just think it would be great if the game was announced at E3 next month, and if Miyamoto was the one to present and show off the game, just like he was on stage way back in 2012. So like I said, there is so much more to discuss when it comes to Nintendo at E3, and even other companies. I have a lot of great aspirations for other companies and other systems as far as games that could show up at E3. It's an exciting time, man. We're just over a month away, the first E3 in 2 years. Can you freaking believe it? What a great way to feel like we're coming out of this horrible pandemic scenario, even though it's clearly not over, and I don't want to undersell how serious that whole situation is, especially in other parts of the world where it's still not going too hot, man, and my heart goes out to everybody. I just want us all to be safe and get through this. But outside of the serious aspect, we discussed the fun nature of the gaming hobby and Nintendo here, and so in that respect, it feels great to have E3 coming back and to have Nintendo coming back. It's like a weird sign of kind of being normal, right? It's a great thing. I'm pumped about this. So these are some of my thoughts, and like I said, closer to E3, I'll make one more prediction video where I talk about a lot more stuff than just these couple of titles today. But this is what I think. These are my discussions and my predictions and my thoughts. What do you guys think? Talk about it below. And with that, this video is a wrap. Thanks, of course, as always, for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Rule of Two Review, and I will catch you next time on another video.